realtors, title companies, real estate brokers. I want to talk to you about how to sell the property of a deceased owner without wasting your time and ending up with nothing. I'm attorney Vernita Williams. Welcome to this 7-part series in which I am discussing a number of things to help realtors, title companies, and real estate brokers sell property when the owner has deceased. This is part 4, and in part 4, I want to discuss realtor fees and attorney's fees. But before this part, I had part 1 in which I talked about the benefits of listening to this series, part 2 in when I talked about the 2 ways of selling a deceased owner's property, part 3 discussed the 7 steps to selling in probate, and in part 4, yes, I talked about those difficult heirs that are owners of a deceased person's property. So now this is part 5. I want to point out some specific things about realtor fees and attorney's fees. When you are selling a property of a deceased person through probate, there are some very special realtor fees and attorney fee issues that you need to be mindful of to make sure your client, the heirs, remain happy. First, let's talk about the realtor fees. Your realtor fees will be your standard fees. Every now and then I'll have a realtor who says, well, I agreed with the personal representative of the estate that I'm going to make more fees or I'm going to get a bonus. Well, when you do that, it impacts what the beneficiaries receive from the sale. So you have to get their consent if you intend to increase your fees. Also, the probate court has to agree with the increase in your fees. So don't just assume the personal representative can increase your fees. Otherwise, you might find that you're expecting a certain amount of money and it just doesn't happen. So realtor fees are generally your standard fees, your 6% in Florida. So let me talk to you about attorney's fees. Well, attorney's fees are not standard. Usually you don't have a flat rate like you will with the realtor. Your attorney's fees are often not a flat rate unless the attorney deems it a case that has a predictable workload and not a lot of problems associated with that file, and they might quote a flat rate, but typically your attorney's fees are going to be between $300 and $500 an hour depending upon the complexity of the case, and the attorney's fees will increase if there's a lot of calls, a lot of contact with the attorney about what's going on, when are we going to close. And then remember, every time you have a buyer back out of a transaction and you have to get another buyer, the attorney has to go back to court because the court orders authorizing sale are generally specific as to the amount and the buyer. So if John Doe was supposed to buy at $200 an hour and John Doe backed out and you have another buyer, that attorney has to go to court and get another court order. So that's another hearing, that's more paperwork, that's more money that is charged in attorney's fees. So be mindful of that. When you get a buyer, make sure they saw the property, they know the problems, they can buy the property, and all of those things to be sure that the first time you get a buyer, that sale is going to go through. Another thing about attorney fee retainers, many times when I'm working with realtors, they will say, what's your retainer to help this family sell this deceased person's property? If I quote a retainer, it's usually, as most probate attorneys, somewhere from $1,500 up to $5,000 as a retainer. But just understand that that's a retainer. It's not the full amount of the attorney fee. Typically, the probate attorney will receive the rest of their money from the proceeds of the sale. So understand, in working with families and people to sell a deceased owner's property, that attorney fee that's quoted up front is not all there will be. So I just wanted to point out a few key things about attorney's fees and about realtor's fees so that when you're working with families, things can go smoothly and you can manage their expectations. This is attorney Vernita Williams. This has been a VCW Law presentation. If you'd like more information, feel free to call me at 786-831-9483. And remember that I will do a part 6 on timelines. How long will the matter take if you're working with an attorney and doing probate proceedings? And part 7 will discuss the key points summarized that have been presented in this 7-part presentation.